This episode of Midco Sports Magazine is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Hello, welcome again to Midco Sports Magazine. We just finished up the high school football championships in the Dakotas, and in South Dakota, there was a group of schools this year that had a little something new and very exciting this year. The All Nations Conference played its first ever championship game at the Dome in Vermilion, and we have a story coming up on year one for the kids in the All Nations Conference. And a small town South Dakota kid now in the National Football League with the Philadelphia Eagles. Dallas Goedert is in our Midco Mag Rewind. But we start in Fargo, North Dakota, and a profile on a 40-year-old bodybuilder. Her name is Elizabeth Galvin. She is a one-armed warrior, and her physical strength is impressive, but it is her inner strength that will leave you inspired. Here's Jody Norstedt.
A mirror can tell us a lot about ourselves. It can reveal the attitude written on our face. It can remind us of our scars, both physical and mental. If we're being honest, sometimes we like our reflection, and sometimes we don't. When Elizabeth Galvin looks in the mirror, she's reminded of the scars on her body, her missing arm, and her fading vision. But that's only part of her story, a story that she'd like you to hear, despite not being able to hear herself. March 12th, 1979. It was the day Elizabeth Galvin entered the world, a world that early on brought more pain than peace.
When I was 11 months old at the time, my parents were married at the time. She was an unfit mother. She was an active alcoholic and a user. She was dealing with addiction. And at 11 months, I almost starved to death. She would leave me in the crib for days at a time. And then parents on my dad's side found me in the crib had just been neglected there.
When Elizabeth turned 3 years old, her life once again took a dramatic turn.
I had had an illness with a high fever. And at that time, the medical advances weren't there either for treating it. And as a result, I became deaf.
At an age when a child's development is typically peaking, Elizabeth was experiencing more and more dramatic setbacks. For nearly 2 years, she had no contact with her biological mom. But after some convincing, Elizabeth's mom was allowed to spend time with her 3-year-old daughter for Mother's Day.
My dad had said, sure, out of respect for my mom, that they would. And then that's when this happened. They had an old-fashioned wringer washing machine. That's how my arm got stuck in the wringing portion of it. And so I was stuck at this angle, and it started to keep wringing, and it went for several hours like that. So they went to the hospital. They had gone to a couple of different hospitals trying to save my arm. They took skin off my thigh and off my mid-abdomen and along the side of my chest area. But they also thought, because it's a 3-year-old body, that's a lot of skin to lose. So at that point, they decided to amputate to save my life.
Before her 4th birthday, Elizabeth had experienced starvation, neglect, became deaf, and lost a limb.
I remember growing up, it was difficult. They had old school technology, as far as prosthetics were concerned, just a hook. And of course, they would mock me. Oh, there goes the hook girl.
Elizabeth battled thoughts of anger and frustration for most of her childhood. It wasn't until her teenage years that her fighter personality started to take shape.
I didn't want anybody to label me as handicapped and therefore saying I can't do this or that. So my attitude really changed and I started to rebel more, but in a good way, to say, no, wait, hold on, I can do this myself.
Like a weight lifted off her shoulders, Galvan began to live a more driven life, ensuring that her disabilities wouldn't define her. As a single mom, she cooked, she cleaned, and she provided while raising her now 17-year-old daughter, Brianna.
She's part of the National Honor Society as well. I'm really proud of her. She's doing phenomenal in school. So this is one proud mom here.
A proud mom and a pumped up mom. In a place that can make so many feel insecure about their body, Galvan finds comfort, peace, and pride.
And I know that people are probably talking to, and they're shocked to see, oh, she's doing this or she's doing that. And that inspires me to keep going.
So how does a one-armed deaf woman develop a passion for weightlifting? There's a story behind that, too. Usher syndrome has caused Elizabeth's vision to gradually worsen her entire life, getting to the point where she has very narrow tunnel vision. Those vision issues played a role in a serious car accident in 2015.
There was a driver that T-boned me, and as a result, it crushed my spine. I had to go through intensive therapy.
But when therapy wasn't enough, surgery was her only hope.
It was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call to have a healthy lifestyle, to take care of yourself, because I am getting older.
Elizabeth made decisions. One was to give up driving. Another was to get in better shape. And eventually, with encouragement from others, she discovered a new passion, becoming a bodybuilder.
At first, I have to admit, I thought, oh, please, bodybuilding, it's just a way to show off your muscles and a way to get some attention. But when I started to do the research, I realized that wasn't true. It makes you healthier just all around for life. Not just physically healthier, but mentally too, especially as we age. So there's more to it than just the physique part of it.
Galvan has competed in several beauty pageants and physique competitions, most recently winning multiple awards in 2018, including the Inspiration Award at the Upper Midwest region of the National Physique Competition. You'd think that a glance in the mirror would bring up bad memories of what she's endured. But if you think that, you don't know Elizabeth Galvin.
Sometimes people see the end result but don't know what I've been through as well. But I have a full story, a rich story. I could have portrayed myself as the victim, but I chose not to. I chose to portray myself as a fighter and a survivor and a warrior and a strong, deaf woman of steel.
Elizabeth eventually contacted her mom again when she was in high school and was able to get a sense of closure to the hurt she experienced by offering forgiveness. Here's what she said about that.
We can't blame people who are suffering from mental illness, and it's not our job to judge them. A lot of times they can't even take care of themselves and can't take care of their children either. I don't hate her. Not at all. I love her.
That's a message that's good for all of us to hear. Also, I should mention, Elizabeth plans to return to the stage to compete in bodybuilding in April for the NPC Upper Midwest Championships, which will be hosted in Fargo. So good luck to her.
Up next, another small-town South Dakota kid making it in the NFL. Dallas Goedert is in our Mag Rewind when we come back.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back. Time to rewind, and this is a story that we had here on the show in September of 2017. That was about 6 months before Dallas Goedert was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. And at the time of our story, Dallas was making a name for himself on the football field at South Dakota State University. But we found him in his younger days taking shots in a whole different arena. Here's David Brown.
For a man named Dallas, in a town called Britain, his location is out of the ordinary. For a man named after the Dallas Cowboys, on this day, he's playing a sport more associated with the Dallas Mavericks. And for a man on the cusp of the NFL, his first dream was the NBA.
I had two older sisters that both were in basketball and volleyball, and my mom was the coach for both of them. So I would go to all their practices and As a young kid, I just wanted to compete too, so I think I was 5 years old when I had my mom enter me and a couple of my buddies in our first 3-on-3 tournament.
Growing up in northeast South Dakota, in a town of less than 1,500 people, sports were a way of life for Dallas Goedert. From soccer to swimming to track, the calendar was defined by the activity, not the weather. Dallas exceeded the most in basketball and football, but he thought the hardwood would be his ticket to college.
I could have went to D3 schools, probably walked on to a couple D2 schools for basketball, and from 10th grade to probably the start of my senior year, that's what I wanted to do. I liked basketball a lot more than football.
During his senior year at Britton-Hecla High School, Dallas continued playing both sports. He still thought basketball was his choice for the next level, but one person in the stands noticed his football talent, and it set off a chain reaction.
I got a call from a guy named Carl Larson, who's a pastor in Millbank. He coached for us years ago, and he helps their high school team coach, and he told us about Dallas. We watched the film, and honestly, it wasn't the best quality film, and hardly ever is at a school that size. It's just budget-wise. And I went and watched him play basketball to try to get some evaluation or a better evaluation on him.
He said the biggest guy on the court likes to chuck threes and doesn't like to go down low and get physical, even though he's the biggest guy on the court.
Well, I saw a very gifted athlete. I didn't see, and I told him this, I didn't see as great an effort as I wanted to see. You know, he shot a lot of three-point shots as a 6'4", 6'5" guy, and I didn't think he chased the ball enough.
But he wasn't wrong. I didn't like to be down low. I like to be outside, shoot threes.
So a combination of word-of-mouth advertising, poor quality video, and an uninspiring basketball game naturally led to South Dakota State head coach John Stiegelmeier offering Dallas a walk-on spot as a tight end. There was just one problem. Another school had also noticed his football potential. Division II Northern State in Aberdeen, South Dakota offered Dallas a full scholarship, but he turned it down.
I think my parents thought I was crazy when I told them that I was going to walk on to SDSU having a scholarship at Northern, but one day I just woke up and felt like it was the right decision to play at the highest level I could.
After redshirting his true freshman season, Dallas was hoping to prove his worth as a walk-on. And when every other tight end had an injury during spring practice in 2014, he took full advantage.
It was just me taking all the reps in spring ball.
We called them Dallas shifts because it would he was supposed to line up on the right and he'd line up on the left and then have to move over before the snap. So, but it was really good for him too that he got thrown to the fire and had to learn on the fly.
Over the course of the 2014 season, Dallas worked his way up the depth chart from third-string tight end to starter. He only hauled in 8 catches, but the SDSU coaches saw potential, rewarding him with a partial scholarship after the season and looking to increase his role for 2015.
Our coaching staff identified him as a difference maker, and those are guys we expect a lot of and can give that. And we kept throwing them the ball, they kept designing plays and formations, and he kept making plays.
Dallas's catch total rose from 8 to 26. And before the 2016 season, he received an 80% scholarship and was named to the Missouri Valley Football Conference's preseason first team.
We talked ahead of the season that how he's got to have at least 50 catches this year, and kind of had that as the expectation for him. And early in the season, he just was playing so well that it really just blew that out of the water.
It wasn't just the quantity of catches, but the quality. And it all started in the second game of the 2016 season against Drake.
That was Goedert, who snagged it with one hand for a touchdown.
The main thing I thought is, you got to be kidding.
Until I saw it on the replay, and then the whole stadium was just kind of quiet watching it. I'm just like, wow, I impressed myself. It was really cool.
The touchdown versus Drake was just one of several highlight reel one-handed catches for Goedert in 2016. Even though Coach Stig admits he would still prefer Dallas use all the tools available.
We would love him to use 2 hands, but again, sometimes physically you can't get both hands on it, and he's got that ability.
They always tell me to catch it with 2 hands, and usually, jokingly, I say, well, Terrence should throw me a better ball. If I can catch it with 2, I'm going to try. There's a few times where I could have, but one hand just got there quicker.
Whether it was one hand or 2 hands, Dallas was responsible for 92 grabs in 2016. nearly doubling the preseason goal coaches set for him at 50. And just like word of mouth got Dallas noticed in high school, it's also working the same at SDSU. NFL scouts already have him on their radar for the 2018 draft.
Seeing more articles, where I am, where people say I'm going to go in the draft, what tight end they think I'm ranked. I definitely read all that stuff. I enjoy reading all that stuff. I think it's awesome to see, but at the same time, I don't want to let it get to my head.
I see Dallas being that type of guy, and if he has another great season, I see him having an opportunity.
I mean, I think the sky's the limit for him, and I think he can, not only get to the next level, but be a great player there.
From Fridays in high school to Saturdays in college to possibly Sundays in the NFL, time has flown by for Dallas Goedert. And even though his path didn't involve basketball, his journey has been all about shot selection. A coach took a shot on him, and Dallas took a shot on himself.
And I think about that call by Carl Larson and the fate of how it all worked out, and I think life is like that. In this case, we are really blessed to have Dallas on our football team.
It's definitely something to think about if he doesn't ever talk to Stig. Maybe Stig never hears my name, and maybe I'm starting my 5th year at Northern State University. So it is kind of crazy to think about. Or maybe if I just don't even make the decision to walk on and go and take the scholarship, it's just, you just never know where you'd be. Hopefully I'd be having similar success at Northern, but you just never really know.
Well, Goedert was back in South Dakota this summer for a football camp in Aberdeen, and he says that he still plays some 2-on-2 and some 3-on-3 basketball. He's not ready to give that up totally yet. He also had this to say about playing in his second season in Philadelphia.
I just want to be good enough that they can't take me off the field. And then the team goals, we want to win a Super Bowl this year. We're going to win the division, so we got high expectations on this team.
More with Dallas Goedert in this week's Science of Sports.
Sports science is the use of scientific tools and methods to improve athletic health and performance. Dallas Goedert is an outstanding overall football player. As a tight end, he has to make tough catches in traffic, often while getting hit. Dallas has a great ability to concentrate and focus that he's developed through training and practice. He also has huge, strong hands that help him to grab the ball and securely bring it into his body. The Eco 6 are a great training tool to use with athletes to help them improve their focus and concentration while doing athletic movements and maneuvers. So people often overlook the cognitive aspect of athletic performance because you always have to be thinking while you're moving. And the Eco 6 gives us a great tool to be able to develop that skill in athletes.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to Midco Sports Magazine. Well, there is some thought that there are too many classes of high school football in South Dakota. Well, technically, we added another one this year. The All Nations Conference started play and finished out its first season. How did it come to be, and how did it all turn out? Here's Jason Andera.
We got something to prove, gentlemen. We got one goal. The one goal is to get here to the playoffs. Now the second goal is to get to the championship.
Zeke Prado loves football.
But we got to go one game at a time.
As the head coach,
family on 3. Let's go! 1, 2, 3. All right!
He wants to pass his love of football to the students at Lower Brule.
You know, that idea of teamwork, playing for one another, being selfless.
There are a few more barriers for Native American football players than you might expect. Many schools struggle with the resources it costs to play this expensive sport, and players hesitate to go out for football because it doesn't have a long-standing tradition in the culture.
You know, basketball is the sport in Indian country.
Football is a sport where numbers and depth are of utmost importance, and the number of kids willing to play football was flat out a problem.
When you're going against Bonhomme, who's been in the weight room for 4 years, and they have a youth program from 6 years old all the way up, and these guys, they have 45 kids, coming out, and I show up with 13 kids.
We finished the season last year with 13 guys. You have 4 substitutions, and you don't have skill guys, so your guys are dogged.
Reduced players means reduced competitiveness, and reduced competitiveness means reduced players. It's a hard cycle to break. Year after year, coaches from schools with primarily native populations would worry more about their players' safety than actually trying to win games.
St. Francis had somewhere between 10 to 15 kids out for 11A. 11A supposed to play Dakota Valley. And how safe is that?
It's not fun for me. I know my kids aren't having fun.
Just felt like there had to be a better way to have football be played out here in our reservation schools.
That's when a few key people at Lower Brule stepped up and started having serious conversations on how to improve football for these schools.
When the state rotation came up, we said, well, there's no better time than now, so let's try. Let's go in front of the board and let's talk about it.
And we're lucky to have Dr. Sortos who agreed with it.
Dr. Daniel Swartos is the executive director of the SDHSAA, an organization that some would see in direct conflict with a new football league. He saw it as a way to improve the situation for some of their member schools.
It's a concept we support. There's really no drawback to it from our perspective. We want healthy, strong programs in all of our schools.
The next step was to form what would be known as the All Nations Conference.
Lance did a lot of the legwork, talking with different ADs and just trying to get the idea to all the schools, the coaches, everyone. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty tough process.
After much planning and consulting, the next step was to get schools to commit.
My offensive coordinator, he's a high school teacher, and he asked his class, he goes, how many of you guys that aren't up for football would go out if we played an all nations, native schedule? And more kids raised their hand, and to me, that is why we have high school athletics.
Soon the All Nations Conference was ready to launch in the fall of 2019 with 12 charter members. Red Cloud, Cheyenne Eagle Butte, Tias-Pazina, Lower Brule, Crow Creek, Crazy Horse, Ulrichs, Flandreau Indian, Marty, St. Francis, Takini, and Little Wound were the inaugural members. Some of these schools had never had football before, some programs restarted their team, and some just changed leagues, but they all had something in common. All the schools increased participation significantly, and all these players had hope entering the season.
This new league, it brought onto our school, we're going into today's game with 20 players, 21 players, and now we're gonna have those guys, we're gonna be able to fill those, those gaps where, oh, hey, he's tired. Okay, we got this guy, bring him in, let's get him a break.
The old team I came from was really, I can say it was a little bit family, they were family, but it's not as much as here. Everyone, they have each other's back.
Our goal years ago was, let's make the playoffs. Let's make the playoffs. Let's make the playoffs. Now, coming into this season, it's let's win, let's get to that championship game. And I think that's what really woke a lot of the younger guys that are out up too, was knowing that they can come out and they can win and they can compete with everybody else. It's awesome to see because they want to, they want to be that team leader.
The championship game was part of a season finale which celebrated the success of this inaugural season. Crow Creek captured the state title after an undefeated season against Lower Brule. History might remember the score, but hopefully they remember much more.
Way to go, guys. I'm so damn proud of each and every one of you. You played through adversity, you paid for pain. You guys are the best. Last time, guys. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3,
And joined now by the Jandy Man. And all right, you followed this all year. It was, by all accounts, a successful season for these teams and these schools that were involved. So they keep it rolling for year 2 coming up, or what happened?
Yeah, all the plans are positive and progressive. They're looking to not only continue what they're doing, but to possibly expand. They've got 2 schools in Nebraska that are ready to enter at any moment. So that will be the next step. And then there's even teams from North Dakota that have asked about it. There's even a team from Wyoming that said, we'll play all our games on the road and travel to play in the All Nations Conference because they think it's such a cool deal.
All right, but the South Dakota teams will stay the same at least for the next year, right?
Yeah, so they rotate every 2 years in classification, so they're going to fill out the second year of staying in the classification that they chose before considering moving back. So there's, a few more schools in South Dakota that'll consider that move in a year or so.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Jason and Darren. Thanks for watching Midco Sports Magazine. You can find this episode and all episodes on YouTube and IGTV.
This has been Midco Sports Magazine, presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.